they just need to realize that when they're prescribing this stuff, it can be a great painkiller, but it can also be heroin, right? And they need to think about it that way, because it's gone too far now to just say, yeah, it's not really my issue. I make the prescriptions. He said his back was sore. It doesn't cut it.
I mean, it used to be a lot easier. Back in 1991, that's 20 years ago now. Yeah, I was going into walk-in clinics and getting Percodan and Percocet, and they actually sent me a letter to my house saying you were no longer allowed to go into any walk-in clinic in Ontario because I was going in and getting double prescribed or whatever they called it back then. Overprescribed, double dipping, or whatever they wanted to call it. I was one of the first people to do that here in London.
Police forces and governments, at least locally, tend to emphasize legal solutions, criminalizing people who double doctor or obtain prescriptions in ways that they shouldn't. I don't have a big problem with that, but I'm a doctor. I see these people as more sick than most of them are bad. I mean, most of them are quite normal people who've ended up in a very painful, difficult situation as far as I'm concerned.
But in terms of a police force tackling the problem citywide, trying to get people off the pills, it's an addiction issue, right? And it's a supply issue. And that's how it needs to be dealt with.
I heard the other day they're going to make you have to sign or you have to show ID to get OxyContin because it's such a problem. Plus, they have big signs in the window, we do not have OxyContin, because people are robbing the places to get it. And that's just the natural decline in what happens to people. They'll do anything to get it, and I was the same. I would have done anything to get it.
It is a very, very serious problem, and this is an issue that I actually have a personal commitment to, because I've heard stories. I've actually seen firsthand the impact of the abuse of prescription narcotics. I have had very emotional pleas to do something about it, and that's why we're moving forward on our narcotics strategy. We pulled together experts from all different perspectives on the issue and developed a very robust strategy to combat the abuse of prescription narcotics in Ontario.
Starting November 1, the government just issued this law that whenever doctors see a patient on a narcotic, they should just write their license number there, and the government issued ID issued to a patient, and then whenever we receive that prescription, they have to present that same ID to us just to make sure that there's no misuse and abuse.
But one of the big pieces of it is to create a database so that we can actually identify doctors who are overprescribing. We can identify the pharmacies that are probably not asking the right questions when people come in with prescriptions, and we're able to identify individuals who are getting prescriptions from many different doctors and going to many different pharmacies to get those prescriptions filled.
And now they're trying to make it, next to impossible. I just don't think they will. I think there's somehow that stuff's coming from somewhere, because when there's that much money involved, they're going to find a way to get it.
I've talked to some addiction workers who say that's not enough. It's just so easy to get prescriptions from one doctor legitimately that that's not going to be enough. They also say that as in most legislation, it kind of criminalizes the addicts instead of going after the source.
What the law basically is doing is, number one, making it more difficult for people to have a safer access and an affordable access to substances that help them deal with their pain. It's also going to put the community as well as individual users at greater risk.
I don't want to criticize the legislation because it just came out, so I don't know how it's, how they're going to deal with it and enforce it, but it has to be aggressive. There's no doubt, because they might not realize now how big the problem is, but they're gonna. There's no doubt that they're gonna realize how big this is, and like I said, I think the point that will drive home to them is how it affects everyone. It's all classes. It's all neighborhoods, right? It's not that one neighborhood that they can ignore, like some of the other drug issues, right? It's all over.
My personal interest and wish was that there was more done to educate the public about these issues, and I wish that there was better access to treatment. My guess is that financial resources being what they seem to be, that's a stumbling block for government services and agencies.
Take a look at the cost of shelter beds, emergency visits, police visits, and it's astounding, the number. And if you multiply that by all the addicts, the cost to taxpayers is huge. And people don't want to pay for treatment, but again, it's a fraction of the cost of enforcement and health care.
In my province, I think the Ontario taxpayer is getting royally screwed by paying for all of the complications, consequences, and costs of the problems associated with these drugs.
We know the costs are enormous, and it is difficult to estimate exactly how much of the money we spend covering the prescriptions is due to abuse and how much is the appropriate use. But what we do know is that there are significant amounts of money being spent by the government, so by taxpayers, in purchasing these drugs that then become used as street drugs.
As an Ontario taxpayer, I look forward to the day when people wake up and realize that the situation is no different than the alcohol, gaming, or tobacco industry, and that these companies are taxed heavily to pay for proper public education and treatment of the patients and people, reckless people, who have suffered the consequences of these drugs being distributed so widely.
I still think the issue is vastly misunderstood. I still think that a whole lot needs to be done at federal and provincial levels, and I think that it's not a problem that's going to go away. Ironically, the only thing that might limit its use these days is it's so popular the price has gone up. And that may be a result of some doctors starting to get aware of and limiting their prescriptions. But it's still a hugely sought after drug, and I don't think it's going anywhere for a long, long time.
It's a scary thing. And it's a scary thing because who knows where it's all going to end. I'm hoping, I'm not hoping the drug problem keeps escalating, but I think it will. Let's be realistic about it, right? London's just going to keep getting bigger. It is a good town. It could, if it keeps getting, keeps going the way it's going, and ends up being a 800,000 like Winnipeg or something. Yeah, we're going to have large city problems, but those are growing pains. I mean, good things are happening downtown. There's good things happening all around, but we'll have to see in the future what the future holds.